Howdy, this is Robert and welcome to Dailey Woodworks. Today I'm going to show you how we make a tabletop. Now, today we're going to make a tabletop out of S4S red oak. S4S means that it's surfaced on 4 sides. It's basically been planed, milled, and it's pretty much ready to work. We're going to do a few minor touch-ups on this, but especially if you're a beginning or recreational woodworker, you're probably going to start with mostly S4S material. And even in my shop, I try to buy fully surfaced material because it's just faster and easier to work with and saves me the big equipment and time of milling it myself. So we have our 10-foot 1x red oak, and it ends up 1x8. So it ends up being 7 1/4 is its final thickness by 3/4 of an inch thick. We're going to keep the thickness and we're going to tweak that width a little bit. We have to join it, cut it, and then join it together with some joinery, and we're going to walk you through each of those steps. The top is going to be for this dog kennel here. This kennel ends up being 67 inches long, where our top is going to be 1.5 inches, so 67 plus 1.5 inches is 68.5. And I want to give myself just a little bit of wiggle room whenever I glue this up to cut it to final size. So we're going to cut our top about 70 inches long, rough sawn, or to its rough measurement, and then we'll fine tune it after our glue up. So anytime I'm making repeat cuts, I just set a stop block up on my miter saw. And this doesn't have to be super precise. So I'm just going to grab my stop block. I've got my clamp and strap right here. Over, and I'm just going to put my tape against the blade and come out to about 70 inches because you remember we're making this longer than it needs to be. Now I don't have room to go full there. This oak is 10 foot long. As long as I don't have any checks here on the end, I can go ahead and come over to here and make that cut because we're just getting an approximate dimension right now. We're not trying to fine tune it. If I was doing a perfect finish cut, I'd be doing this different. So I've cut all these to size, and my finished table is going to overhang 1.75 inches all the way around. It's about 26 inches wide, and I've cut my rough lumber to 70 inches all the way down so I can trim off about 1.5 inches of total measurement when I'm done. That just gives it that way. If I don't glue it up perfectly straight, we're good. My width is 29 inches, so I'm good there. But I can't just glue it up yet. I have to do a little bit more work. Now, admittedly, this lumber is pretty good, so I really could skip this next step if I wanted to, but just to get the best possible top, I want to do it. But what you might be able to see right here is one of these 2 boards has a slight cup in it. They're butting up together almost perfectly on the end, and then we have like a 1/16 inch gap right here. So what we need to do is we need to joint these boards to get them where we need to be. So let me show you how we do that. I've shown my joining sled many times. It's a 13-inch wide piece of plywood. You can see I accidentally cut into it here. And I use my micro jig match fit dovetail clamps, routed a dovetail groove into the board for these to act as a track. Go right here, and then I've just got it overhanging ever so slightly. Let's see if I can show you that. Where it's just barely a saw blade. So I'm going to cut off that edge. It'll give me a perfectly straight edge because this is my straight edge running against my fence. Then I'll flip it and then rip off another saw blade. It'll make my board a little bit thinner, but it gets any unevenness or any curves out of there so I can get a nice straight board. I lost maybe 3/16 to a quarter of length. Whenever you're dealing with pine, a lot of times it's got some big curves. I've lost up to an inch in a board of pine before. After you joint all your boards together, you can just glue them up. You would just need to hold them flat, glue them up, get a lot of good clamping pressure there, and you'd be done. I like to take the extra step of adding some domino tenons. A less expensive equivalent to this would be a biscuit joiner or even dowels if you had a dowel jig. What that does is it helps hold the boards flat and in parallel with each other so you don't have any ridges you have to set off later. And giving that extra meat in there, I believe, makes a stronger tabletop in the long run. So that's the extra step we take. So I'm going to do the same thing as before. And I'm going to start with my paddle just on the other side. You know, hook it, make sure I'm flush, and then I'm just going to truss my jig all the way down. This is my panel clamp that I use for all of my glue ups, and I mean pretty much all of my glue ups. Today I'm gluing up a tabletop that's going to be about 28 inches. So I need to get my clamp system set up to be about 29 inches right there. So let's set that up. Now it's time to set the first one right there. Make sure I'm clamped. And now you'll also see this angle iron. The angle iron works by taking a second piece, set right there, and then I can squeeze it together to keep my tabletop flat. I line these with packers tape to keep it from causing any kind of chemical reaction with the glue squeeze out or getting any rust stains on there. So because I did this with my domino, the only thing that's important to me is making sure this arrow is all facing the same way. If I used a biscuit joiner, then I'd have my witness marks and I'd have it all labeled A, B, C, D. I do have this labeled just to make sure it's right. This is C, and I'm going to do, this is for D, C, B, A, all the way up. Now it's time to put glue and dominoes in here. So since the dominoes are primarily for alignment, you don't necessarily even have to get glue in here, but I like that extra peace of mind that I get. So make sure I get glue in my dominoes nice and good. Now when I put my dominoes in, I'm going to try to get them centered in these oversized slots. Biscuits naturally have a little play set up in there. I'm going to aim for the approximate center. So I have my glue spread on the other board, but I do want to make sure I don't have to go and put a lot of glue here. I don't really have to do that because there's enough glue on the other board to spread out. But I do want to make sure I get enough in those dominoes, and then if there's any furry pieces of wood sticking out that might interfere with the glue up, I want to get that. So I got that done. Now it's time for the actual glue up. I like having a rubber mallet handy just in case I have problems with alignment. I can kind of knock everything in place. I'm going to start at the end and then just work my way from one end to the other. That. All right, I've zoomed in pretty close so you can see what I'm doing. You can see I've got the gap right here. I'm gonna start closing that up. And I'm not gonna put a ton of pressure on. I'm just gonna close that gap and I'm gonna walk away. So I closed that gap and now I'm gonna go over to this side and I'm gonna close the gap on this end. There we go. Not a lot of pressure. I just closed the gap. If you're having to fight it, then stop. Now I'm going to come through and I'm going to adjust my clamps. And I just kept those out of the way until I needed them. And you want to clamp about every 18 inches or so. If not closer to that. Right now I'm just getting it closed, and then we'll really start cranking pressure on it in a minute. Okay, so now I have it closed up. Now the last thing I want to do is put a bunch of pressure on it and make it pop out. This is where, if you're not using dominoes or biscuits, you want to do this after you get the first two clamps on. So now I'm going to take my angle iron, and then I'm going to clamp that down good and hard. So now I have this good and clamped. It's not gonna buckle on me. Now I'm gonna start cranking in this pressure a little bit to really make sure all my gaps are closed, so I get a nice strong tabletop. And I'm looking for glue squeeze out. So the best thing I found for glue squeeze out is not going over a wet rag. That dissolves the glue and works it into the grain more, and you might get some glue lines. I go to my table saw, there's always some sawdust in there, put it in some 5-gallon bucket, and then I just kind of rub it in. That seems like it soaks up the glue really quick, pulls it out of there, make sure you're not getting into your wood grain any. And then it also makes it super easy to sand off if it doesn't just rub out. So I've changed clothes, which means it's been overnight. Typically, you want to let this sit at least 4 hours in my experience. The type 1, 2, plenty of clamping pressure. You don't want to strain it a lot after that, but you can work it and you can actually get it done. Overnight, you're gold. And now I'm just going to hit this with some 40 grit real quick on Rotex mode to get the high spots off and then knock out any glue that's still there. I'm going to make sure I keep my line right here, so I know that's where I need to trim without showing any dominoes. So now I just have it rough sanded with 40 to get the high spots off. And now I'm going to trim it to its final size, and then we're going to sand it up to 180 and our tabletop will be done. I make my tabletops 1.5 inches bigger than the actual surface. That way it overhangs about 3/4 of an inch on each side. Now we're going to square up the other side. And now we're going to cut the width. Here, and I'm just going to measure over. Alright, and there you have it. That is how to make the tabletop. Now, if you're going thicker, if you're trimming it out, there's a lot of other steps. You still have to sand it, stain it, finish it, all that. But I have a lot of other different videos over those processes, so I'm not going to show it here. But this is how we take S4S lumber, tune it up, join it for a nice straight edge, then put dominoes or biscuits in it to keep it aligned nice and flat, clamp it up, glue it up, let it sit, trim it to its final dimensions. Hey guys, I hope that video was helpful to you in learning to make your own tabletops. It's really easy. There are a little bit of steps involved to get it right. It's not just as simple as buying some wood from Home Depot and pocket screwing it together. You can absolutely use pocket screws if that's your only joinery method, but I would still recommend having some type of clamp to help hold it in place and hold it together. You could even use wedges on your workbench if you're using pocket screws, but definitely take the time to make that joining jig for your table saw and get those good straight edges on there. Because even if it looks straight from the hardware store, there's probably still a little bit of a curve in there that you need to cut out. and that's how you'll get better tabletops. Hope this helps. Subscribe. Go to the recreationalwoodworker.com where you can learn all about us, our private Facebook group, buy plans, get tool reviews, things to buy, all that kind of good stuff. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.